I think that this is as you say, a compromise with reality, and I'm sure it's half-hearted. I'm sure that there are probably people who have signed on to these ideas who don't realize what they might be signing on to.
Terence Corrigan of the IRR is optimistic. For those of you who know Terence, this might come as something of a surprise. I'm talking to you about a recent piece that he wrote for the Daily Friend, and Terence joins me today. So Terence, are you optimistic?
No, it's a very qualified optimism, but let me say that there is some potentially good news, and in an environment in which that is rare, it should be taken advantage of.
All right, so in the piece, you outline one new development, which is a policy discussion document that was signed off by Cabinet, which discussed the professionalization of the civil service. And as we've documented many times on this channel, one of the key pillars of the ANC policy agenda has been cadre deployment and the politicization of the civil service. So this seems to be going against the grain somewhat of the kind of established orthodoxy in the ANC.
What we've seen is the publication of a document, a framework towards the professionalization of the public sector. Now, this has been coming for a while. I think that our viewers could take note of the title, Towards the Professionalization. Why, sort of in the third decade of democratic governance, we're talking about professionalizing it. It suggests that we've missed the boat somewhat. The ANC certainly has been talking about a developmental state since the 1990s, even before the transition. The idea was that development would be very state-centric. The state would discipline capital, would make appropriate investments. This is sort of the South Korean, Singaporean, Taiwanese, Chinese model, which is completely laughable in view of the state we actually have. And there's been some realization about this. The National Development Plan talked about a capable state, and this is also something that President Ramaphosa has hung his own hat on. What is interesting in this document is not just that it talks about qualifications, experience, merits, etc., but that it says explicitly that cadre deployment is a problem. It doesn't try and dodge this as previous documents have done by talking about the interface between the political and the administrative spheres. It doesn't try and split the difference by saying that well, we need better cadre deployment. It's very forthright, and it makes a clear contradistinction between merit and deployment, implying you can have one or you can have the other. You can't have both. I think that's entirely correct. The Zondo Commission has made it very clear that this is counter-constitutional and illegal. There is no justification for doing it, and there never has been. Though, understand, this was adopted as ANC party policy in about 1997. So we have way more than 2 decades of practice, and it's become part of a very unsavory system of patronage, where political loyalties have overwhelmed professional competence. So the fact that you have this document on the table, that the cabinet has approved it, now I'm wonder just how many cabinet ministers have actually read it. I wonder, I even give caveats about its possibility for implementation. And I think those, bear in mind that this was almost certainly written by consultants, by academics, civil servants, not by politicians. Nevertheless, the fact that this is in the public domain, I think, is very, very significant.
All right. Well, we'll be certainly watching that with interest there, Terence. And I know that we've had Leon Schreiber, the DA MP, on the show, talking about the litigation that he and his party have launched against cadre deployment. So I think that's certainly an area to watch. But another area that you were speaking about in your piece, which we'll link to below, is the recent medium-term budget policy statement by Enoch Godongwana. What was revealed in that statement, Terence, that caught your eye?
Well, it was the reference to procurement, to saying that public sector entities don't have to wait for Treasury to take the lead. They can come up with their own formulae. And then I think it was just a day or two ago, the actual new regulations came out that these actually post-dated by writing of the piece, which very interestingly seems to do away with the idea of firm set-asides for firms that are owned by one or other race group. They talk about, I think, specific purposes that you can consider for part of the cost or payment that might be made, and I think what we can confidently say that is meant to accommodate racial preferencing. But it does seem that they are backpedaling a little from the idea that procurement needs as a priority to benefit any designated category of supplier, and that value for money also, as we have argued, and as the Zondo Commission's report recommended, value for money has to be front and center. We can do as much empowerment as the public purse allows, if that is at the expense of a functioning state, functioning utilities. Well, that empowerment is all going to be pretty much a dead letter.
All right. Well, forgive my cynicism, Terence, but this doesn't seem to me to be a kind of a flood of common sense, the long-awaited, much-promised new dawn that was supposed to come in with Mr. Ramaphosa. Do you think that what we're seeing here is this, as Marius Ruert, our colleague, would say, this contest between reality and ideology, and that maybe this is a small forward step for reality, a begrudging acknowledgement of the failures that have beset the South African government?
Well, I make the point that I don't really believe that there's any sort of change of heart or ideological conversion. There's no Damascus experience here. I think that this is as you say, a compromise with reality, and I'm sure it's half-hearted. I'm sure that there are probably people who have signed on to these ideas who don't realize what they might be signing on to. I'm sure that any action will be hedged with resistance, with hope for carve-outs and concessions. But I do think that that what this has done is place these issues in the public domain as legitimate topics for debate, and in that sense has opened the Overton window. That these are not holy cows. They may, and in terms of official action, should be discussed. And that, I think, opens the door.
Yeah, Terence, and as you point out in your piece, a few years ago, the then Trade and Industry Minister, Rob Davies, said that BEE and localization are non-negotiable pillars of the South African policy framework. That seems to be now shifting.
Well, Minister Davies, erstwhile Minister Davies' words may well turn out, as I say, to be prophetic. He said we will not be able to step away. I think was words, something to that effect. And whether, in fact, the state is willing to step away remains to be seen. But yes, it seems conceptually there is some entertainment of the idea. I mean, we are not at a turning point. We are several steps away from that. But I do think that the possibility of change, the possibility of a turning point, has been conceded. And if this is purely a practical matter because the ANC sees that dysfunction in the state and its inability to render effective services could be assisted by making some grudging concessions to reality. If it is pure pragmatism with no normative content, I'll take that. I don't need normative commitment. Whether that pragmatism is at as a sort of critical tipping point, well, that still remains to be seen.
Thanks for watching. Let's hand over to you, our audience. Are you as optimistic as Terence Corrigan? Leave your thoughts down in the comments section. Also, if you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out this video over here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.